Okay. Hi everyone. It's Ollie. I'm a little bit late today. Um, each stream gets less and less organized, so um, you'll have to excuse me on that. I hope we don't have any streaming issues. OBS looked okay. Yeah, hopefully we don't have any streaming issues like we did at the start of last week. Now, um, my week's been a bit all over the place, but I've made some progress. I put maybe 2 days, 2 extra days into the inventory system. Um, and that's kind of like at a state now where it's kind of ready. Oh, I've left my messenger open. That's at a state where it's kind of ready. So I'll show everyone what that's looking like. It's improved a lot since last week, and a lot of kind of structural changes have been made. Um, so, so firstly, I can like save and load um, inventories now. So if I load the player's inventory, that's up there. We can kind of move these around and rotate them as needed. And we've got some temporary inventory space here at the bottom. Um, and yeah, that just kind of works as you expected. So you can kind of move items between inventory spaces as required. Um, if we load it again, have a look at the player. So these little boxes are just triggers with an associated item. So I think we touched on it briefly last week, and they're just triggers that link to a prefab. If you can see on the left here, if my character walks over to them, you'll see how an item will get added to the inventory. And as I kind of pick more things up, uh, it'll find a place to slot them in. And each of these items currently has like a maximum of 10, and each pickup gives 5. So as we kind of go through, we'll try and find like empty spaces or inventory not yet filled. So that's that seems to be coming along. I'm quite happy with it. Um, Look at these things. Yeah, so that just works as you'd expected, and you can kind of like try and optimize your inventory space by like very specific layouts. Um, but yeah, that's kind of looking good, I think. So I'm not quite done with this yet. I'm trying to think of a. Well, I've done some research. I think one thing which I don't have at the moment is a good way to kind of look up these items and associated items. So ideally, each of these items would be like a type. So maybe these yellow blocks are maybe that was a consumable, for instance, and these grey ones were guns. And I'd have to right click and equip that to my player, and then that would have changes on the maybe the gun the player's holding and the animation set that's associated with. Um, so there is quite a lot happening there. I think so. I kind of stepped back and I was like, I need to think about my data and where data's coming in from, how it's populated and such. So what I've got at the moment is a, a scriptable object. Can we just have a look at that? Um, where's my scriptable objects? That will be in. item type prefab group. So this is a scriptable object that stores references to prefabs at the moment. So item type prefab. If we go to that item type prefab has like the data type item type, and then a UI to associate with it, and a game object to associate with it. So if this was a gun, you'd have the UI sprite for the gun and the display object for the gun. And I was like, and if we go to the what that prefab looks like, on the right here, I've made a custom inspector, and we've just got an item type prefab, and we set up some of the basics. We just set up a name, how many, if it was ammo, how many kind of things you can have in a stack, and its size on the grid. As I resize this, you can see this doesn't work, but that's an easy fix. But yeah, you kind of define your item types here, and you can see this L shape. It's just a little grid that I made, and we can define a T the same as so, like so. And I'm not entirely happy with this this design, because it means you have to kind of, if I want to get the display UI, I need to go through this prefab, and it doesn't seem particularly efficient. And looking that prefab up is also kind of inefficient. So we go through resources, item data, and then we get the item, and we need to search for the name. So our items at the moment are just called I, L, and T, based on their shape. So I did a bit of research, and I was looking into the Unity addressable system. So I've briefly looked into it before, but before we kind of get into that, I'm just gonna put some music on. And there's like a roughly 2 hour Haircuts for Men mix, and I quite like this band. They're really chill and very ambient, so it makes good background music. So I've been going through these addressables, and the addressable, you need to load in the addressables as a package at the moment, just through the package manager. I think it's like, it's in 1.17, so I think it's like a Unity verified package. Let's have a look, shall we, in package manager. Yeah, so it had like an official release. It's not in preview, although I think like the latest version is a preview. But the text here just well, maybe we'll look at that here. So it says here, the addressable asset system provides an easy way to load assets by address, and it handles asset management overhead. It does a whole bunch of things that you would normally do. It says here, the addressable asset system uses asynchronous loading, support loading from any location or any collection of dependencies. So what that means is you can have this load from a local file system or from cloud storage, and the addressable system will kind of handle that. So if you've got like stuff like downloadable content, you can use the addressable system with that, and it will treat it the same no matter where it comes from. So it says here, whether you use direct references, traditional asset bundles, or resource folders for asset management, addressable assets provide a simpler way to make your game more dynamic. So I've only had like a brief look through this, and I'm kind of learning as I go, and I wanted to be a bit more prepared for some of the nuances of the asset system today, but I have been a little bit distracted this week, and I've had a couple of things on, so So yeah, I'll just try and bring everyone up to speed. So yeah, you would load up assets like you would using resources.load. I don't know if they fixed and improved it, but you might want to add your own intermediate class to manage caching of the data. Normoa. Yeah, I think you're right there. From the brief time I've spent looking into it, that does sound like a good plan. One thing I was going to do was there's a couple of things. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. So the addressables system seems to work by using addressable groups. And so to make an addressable group, you kind of just right-click, create new group, packed assets, and you can give it different configurations. So whether it's like a local or a remote asset. I've already made one here called items, so I'll just remove that. Hi Ian, how's it going? Good to see a couple of people in chat. That's good stuff. We're going a bit more ad hoc this week, Ian, so you'll have to bear with me. So yeah, addressable system. Still learning it, but I've got some items here, and those items are kind of going to be, rather than being items in our UI space, they're going to be the data type of items that kind of store everything about how an item is defined. So I don't know if you just got here, Ian, but I've just quickly gone over the kind of briefcase inventory system I've been working on. So we've got all the spins working and stuff. These are two separate grids, and they kind of be moved onto each other, and the pivots change dynamically. Stacking works, so it's all kind of coming on well. But I'm trying to think about my asset management when it comes to my in-game items, animations, that kind of thing. Thanks, Ian. Yeah, it's been you were right. I think in the first stream you were like, that's 4 weeks worth of work, and I think you're probably dead on with that. $5,000, yeah. I mean, I can't even take subs, so no subs or bits yet. Right, yeah. So where were we? Yeah, so you make groups of assets. I've got items, and then I've got my my game objects here. And you'll notice also there's something called a label, and you can use these labels to filter through groups of assets. So if I wanted to get everything marked items, I could do that. These have all been marked item already. I can add more groups, more labels rather. So maybe if I had a consumable group, consumable, I could make it so the L shape was an item and consumable. So with each of those labels, you can kind of filter through them if required. Now, let's see, I've done a little bit of research into this, and this code is kind of redundant. But I'll try and describe what's happening here, and maybe I'll just start a new class, because we're doing a lot here. So initially, is this set in Raccoon City? I mean, Scott, you seem to ask that every week, and the answer's still no. But who knows? Who knows? If Capcom are willing to give me the money, it can be set in Raccoon City, sure. Right. So basic usage of the addressables. So I'm just going to create a new public void and I'll just call this load assets. Load asset. And you can see I've got like a couple of things up here in my using statement. So Unity Engine dot addressable assets is obviously the most important one. And if you remember the items we've got here, this is just called T, L, and I, and those will be like the names that you use to reference them. If I wanted to add something to this, by the way, you could do that easily. So if I've got a cell UI prefab, I could drag and drop that over the items group, and then it will kind of give it a name based on its location and its name in the project. You can right click on that, simplify addressable names, and it will just simplify it down to the name itself. I don't know how that handles like duplicates, so something to be aware of. And then from there you can kind of set it up with different labels. But we don't need this, so I'm just gonna delete that. Okay. Alright. How are we gonna do? You know what? We'll create a new folder, a new script. Does inventory automatically tessellate to accommodate new items you pick up? Yes, Scott. So I'll give you. I've demonstrated this maybe a few times. But see these little boxes? They're like items, and I just go so I can see the character. As the character kind of goes over stuff, it'll try and add to like a space that it can. So that kind of, you know, it tessellates, but it's not going to have like a perfect fit. So if you want to have like, if I wanted to fit this L shape in, I'd probably need to modify it a bit. So maybe something like that. Oh, that's not going to fit. Yeah, it's very simple, Scott. So all it does is it picks each cell, it rotates 4 times across, you know, 90-degree angles, and see if it can fit. It's like really basic. It's very like basic. And you can set like a runoff storage. So if this storage runs out of space, it will add it to the temporary storage, and then you can kind of position it from there. So like it's working pretty well. Yeah. Load asset. Let's see what we're doing here. So say we wanted to load, what have we got? The T piece. We do addressables dot load asset game object. I was going to make this into a new script just so we can kind of demo it easier. So let me do that now. Oh, that makes sense. The old cast and rotate algorithm. Yeah, brute force is most of my algorithms, sadly. Right. So I'm just going to create a temporary script in my data management folder, and I'll call this addressable example. Yeah, and I'm just going to create a new game object. Addressable example, and drag and drop that onto there, and then open this up. Okay. How's everyone's week been? Like, if anyone, you know, wants to just chat about their week or about their Friday, feel free to let me know, because I'm interested to hear. So firstly, we need the using. Is it using Unity Engine? Drag and drop is a great name for a game, but I can't work out the game mechanic. Drag and drop. Oh, I see. I had to say it out loud. Unity Engine.addressables. Oh, the old pun-based game ideas. Yeah. Drag and drop. It's what would be like some kind of like dragon where you like throw dead dragons onto things. I don't know. Or like you throw dragons into like a simulation thing and they a dragon whose voice drops. Or like puberty dragons. Drag dragons. Okay, yeah, so you need to put them in drag. They need to all be drag queens, firstly. And you drag them into like different places depending on how fabulous they are. You can have that for free. Yeah, RuPaul's Dragon Race. That's exactly it. That's exactly it. There's a game on PlayStation. Well, a game series on PlayStation called Dragoon. And those were like the games that came before Nier. And what they're called Drakengard over here, but yeah, there's a lot of dragon puns out there. It's like Drag Race but for furries, yeah. Like that's like you can print money with that idea. Okay, so right, off track again. That's okay. So load asset, you pass in the type, and then you need to pass in either a string, like a key, with the name. So we'll try that first, and we'll do T. So var asset equals. I think that just comes out as a game object. Unnecessary assignment to value. What have we done here? Show potential fixes. Oh, it needs to be load asset async. That's my bad. Load asset async. And we give it a handle. Oh, we can either give it a handle or we can just do on complete, like dot complete. So because the addressable system is async, you need to kind of factor that into your code. I love the whole dragoon confusion. Panzer Dragoon, yeah, that's another good one. When is Dot's fundamentals getting an update? That's a good question, Scott. I'm planning to make the videos in April, so I need to do some planning for it still, but around April time is when I'll be filming. But yeah, so this will return like a async operation handle, and you can do what you want with that. But I think we're just going to do plus equals, press tab, and Visual Studio will just generate a method for that. So that's returning a game object. And I think we need to instantiate the game object from there. I think. What's it called? Obj. I think we do game object dot instantiate. It's just called obj at the moment. Why is that not working? Oh, it's a handle, isn't it? So we need to do obj dot Value? Result. Yeah, obj.result. I miss hearing you say, "Hello, my name is Oliver Carson. I prove that all the work I'm doing and selling on Udemy is my own." I've never said that once, Scott, but I'll do it just for you. The stuff transform. Okay. Yeah, so to get the game object, we need to get the result because we're getting a handle, obviously. And then we instantiate it like any other game object. I believe that's how it works, at least. Let's see if this works. Maybe if we're lucky, it'll work. Wait, what? Don't you have to do that on Udemy when you sell something? Oh. Oh, well, that's true, Scott. So, what Scott's referring to is when you first create a Udemy course, you need to record a video, which is like, oh, I own all of the work I do, send it to them, and then some poor sap has to watch that and approve you. Like, it's just like a pointless exercise, but I guess more steps in the middle probably help somewhat with their business practice. It's a very niche reference because there was about 3 other people in the room at the time, Scott, but I guess I approve. Oh, we're not loading this. Okay. Right. So we're just going to start awake and then load asset. So that should work. Very niche reference. So I've been continuing my playthrough of Chrono Cross this week. Having a good time with that. I don't know if anyone can see that, but it has worked. So if we go to our scene, because it's a canvas object, we can't see it, but it has spawned T as a reference. So maybe we'll pass in we'll set up a parent for it. So public transform parent. So that. Oh, and we want to put that in our instantiate, obviously. Okay. Let's put that in our item panel for now. We might need to reposition it, but it should at least render. Yeah, there it is. So yeah, that's it's fairly simple, but obviously it's got a couple more steps than I don't know, any of the other systems you might use, like resources.load, or like adding in a reference at the top here. So that's one way you can do it. You can just pass in the address as a string. And another way is to use a reference which is not a string. That's hard to describe, but I think how we do it is if we create a public, is it asset addressable reference? Addressable. That's not it. Well, let's go to the documentation. Have a look what we've got here. So I think like these Unity package references they put up are always like a bit lacking, but they do the job if you look through it. Let's see. Specifying an address, building addressable content, loading or instantiating by address. So that's what we've done before. And then using the asset reference class, that's it. Asset reference. I don't know if that's, we need to import that. So it's public asset reference. I thought it was addressable reference, that's my bad. So let's call this asset ref. and we'll pass that in to our load asset async instead of T. That should just go in there, I think. Save that. No problem, Overleaf. It's good to see you. I hope the kids are doing good. Yeah, we're just going over addressables today, Overleaf. I'm learning it kind of as we go. I've spent the morning on it, but it's it's an interesting system of loading assets into your game if you don't want to use something like the resource folder or something like that. Yo, popping in for a few. Hi, Mighty Bitey. How's it going? I hope you've had a good week. Not too busy. Has everyone been busy this week, or has everyone had like time to go outside into the sun? Addressables. We'll look it up. Useful for mods. Yes. So this is like a system that's made to replace asset bundles. Asset bundles were a bit like all over the place in how you use them. But this is kind of like a simpler way to use asset bundles, or just it's a simpler way to handle your asset management in general. Maybe not simpler, but more powerful, I suppose. I've been busy rendering a lot of 4K videos to the point where my PC becomes useless while rendering. Oh, that's fantastic. You've got like a pretty good machine though, right? I thought you did. Do you get to offset that to the GPU, or...? Okay, right. I'm getting distracted again. Asset reference. Right, so we need to populate this asset reference with an addressable. And we can just go on the drop down and it'll give us a list of our addressable groups, or we can drag and drop one in. So I'll drag and drop T in again. Oh, I'll need to do that again. Just put T in. There we go. Now if I load it, it should just do the same as before. 1080p for life. yeah, I'm 1440p at the moment, so yeah, GPU is fine, but CPU is the bottleneck. Yeah, I mean, just encoding videos, it just takes a long time, doesn't it? But yeah, you can see that that's just loaded in again, as you'd expect. So those are kind of like very common ways that we'd use to find references and find assets using your addressable system. But like there's some other things you can do. Now what I was looking into before the stream is you can load, say if I wanted to, let's have a look at my addressable group. So I've got 3 items, 3 assets with the label item, and one of those assets has the label consumable. Now say if I wanted to get all of the items, how would I do that? So you can actually you can do that basically, and now it says depreciated when I go over this, but if we just go over what this code is doing, is this is just an async task. I'll probably just copy paste this into our current example. So we'll create a new public void load. What do we want to do? Load item references, as we want to get all of the references to all of the items, things with the label item. So what was again? Yeah. So addressables dot load resource locations async, and we want type of game object, and we need to pass in some data to load resource locations. So we need to load in, what do we need to load in? We need to load in the labels that we want to load. So let's do that. So we want to load in items. Oh, okay, yeah, this isn't, you can't use generics on this one. I mean, it says about how this method here, load resource locations async, is depreciated, but it doesn't look like there's anything in the API at the moment to replace it. So I imagine that's going to be like properly removed soon, and the patch notes said nothing about it being depreciated yet, but I would expect the syntax of this to change slightly. But load resource locations async, it's going to load up all of the asset references with the label items. We need to pass in the type, so type of game object. And again, that's going to like return a handle. So again, I'm just going to dot complete. So when it's completed, just press tab on that and it'll generate. Let's import this. So that'll tidy these parameters up a bit. Yeah. So we've got, also we're using Unity Engine.resource management.resource locations. So maybe I'll just put that in our using statement as well. Okay. So this is obviously returning a handle again. So if we do for each, you want to go over all of the items that we find as a result of this. So var item in obj.result, and result is a list resource location. So using that, we can get the asset reference and load the asset. So I imagine we're going to do something like we did where did you go? Yeah, something like we did here, where we just kind of instantiate. But I suppose because we're getting essentially what we're getting is an asset reference, so we need to load the asset as well. So we'll need to do, let's pass this in. Let's pass in something into load asset reference. We'll pass in asset ref. This we should maybe rename this asset ref temp. Terrible naming convention. And awake load asset, I guess we'd pass in asset ref there. We're not actually going to use that. I might be outdated, but I think the new version is load assets async. Oh really? Oh, that does make sense. That does make sense. Let's have a go on that, shall we? The documentation's a bit all over the place on this, so that does make sense though. So let's try doing that again, shall we? So rather than load resource locations async, we would do dot load assets, load assets, I think, yeah. And I guess we pass in game object to that. And items. And we can put a callback into there. How do we do that? Do we just do action? Do we just create an action and pass that in? Game objects. I think that needs to be using system. Just assign that action. Okay. Okay, I guess that makes sense. So, but this does return a handle still, so I guess we use the handle rather than the action. So dot complete. Never use async await in C#, but you could use that. Yeah, so I was actually using that when I was like learning the load resource location async. It is quite handy, the async await stuff, but it does have, if you're not careful with it, it can be a pain. Okay. Oh, okay, that's really cool. So let's see if that works then. Let's just copy our instantiate code. And we need to iterate over this list. Let's call this geo list. So for each var geo in geo list. What have I done there? That should work. Formation, yeah, dot results. Dot result. And then we want to instantiate the game object. Save that. Let's see if this works. I'm quite intrigued. As ever, like, the Unity documentation is all over the place. We're not calling that method. Let's do that. So load item references. I tell you what, let's just pass this in as a parameter. Well, we'll do that in a minute. One thing at a time. But this should load up anything which has an item label. So 3 things. Oh, excellent. No, it worked pretty well. So yeah, that seems to work. Now, with load resource location async, you could pass in a merge mode, which was, for example, if you wanted all of the items that were consumable, you could do that, and it would discard anything that didn't have the consumable tag. So let's pass in, I don't know where we find documentation on this. Let's see if it's in the addressables. See, like the documentation is just terrible. Oh, I'm using an older version, that's probably why. No. Yeah, the documentation, like, it's a mixed bag. Like, it can be really good, but when it's not there, it's like, what am I doing? Yeah. Okay. So in theory, if it works like the other piece of logic, i.e. all Unity docs, yeah, that's totally correct, Nova. Sadly. Um, so in theory, I can pass in an array of different labels. There's some GitHub examples that I found more useful. Yeah, I had a bit of a browse through that this morning, but I didn't have a chance to go over them extensively. And I'm always a little bit worried about if they're outdated or not. But so let's create a new string. And we'll pass in. Was it consumables? Consumable. Consumable. Okay. And can we like choose a? Yeah, we do have a merge mode, so we'll do addressables dot merge mode dot. And I think if we want something that has items and consumable, we want intersection. I think. What's happening here? Oh. That's obsolete as well. Maybe using merge mode is obsolete. Maybe that's what it is. Let's see if it works regardless. We can always learn the proper syntax as we go. Yeah, that works. So our L is the only thing that has items and consumable, and that seems to work. So if I change the merge mode to union, it should just put all of the items down. Yeah, okay. Fantastic. That's really useful. That's actually really useful. So my I haven't fully like considered my strategy for this yet. I need to probably put some more time into it, but we'll look into this in a minute. But what I think I'm gonna do is I'm gonna have multiple scriptable objects that define items, and those scriptable objects will have what do they call them? Asset references on them for different parts of the object. So when I need like the shotgun UI, I might not need the shotgun 3D model, so I can just load that. Whereas what I'm doing at the moment is I have a prefab which has references to the other models, and I load that prefab and then I instantiate through there, and it seems a little bit clown shoes. So and that's not something I'll do in this stream today, because I think I need to properly think about it, but that's my theory for it going forward. So yeah, that's kind of, that's the main thing I wanted to go through today, was addressables. So it seems pretty useful. So let's have a look at the a little bit of a browse through it, shall we? So there's a whole bunch of stuff I haven't looked at in addressables yet, but you can like configure it in a number of different ways. I just need more time to research it, but yeah, I think I just want to start using the addressable references to kind of populate stuff. Because I'm a bit worried about duplicating data in multiple places, particularly with the item definitions. Um, One particular way I could do item definitions as well is to have like a JSON file and just use that to manually put all the data in I need. But I don't think... I think if I create a scriptable object, so my current scriptable object, which is just loading all, has all of this stuff in, I've got like a custom editor for it, so wait, no, for my prefabs I have a custom editor, so let's load those up again. Where have they gone? I select them here? Yeah. So my item type prefab, to get this grid, I had to just do some custom editor scripting, and rather than defining that in a JSON file, I think defining that in the inspector makes sense. So I think scriptable objects are probably the way to go for that data. But yeah, that's a bit of a whip work in progress. So in terms of where I'd like to go next for the game, obviously for a while we haven't really made much progress visually. I'm just going to hide the canvas stuff for now, so we can have a bit of a proper look at it. So anyone who's tuned in before has probably seen this scene. I think I worked on it about 2 weeks ago. Like a subway scene I made. Very new to level design. I'll remove these item pickups as well. But this is... I think this looks really good. But it is kind of very simple. Quite iterative. But in terms of gameplay at the moment, I've just kind of got this fixed camera still. And I think there's going to be mainly fixed cameras or like pan and scans. So obviously you move around, and at the moment it's still tank controls, so it's like a Resident Evil with like a quick turn. And in recent times I'm thinking about changing it to like a Devil May Cry style movement system, but I don't want it to be like a third like an over the shoulder camera system. I want it to be authored camera angles. So I figured we'd look at some examples of that. Let's open a new YouTube tab. I'll tell you what, let's do a private window. I don't want to expose everyone to my my YouTube subscriptions. So, having said that, the home screen's probably not much better. So the Devil May Cry. Let's look at the first Devil May Cry. Just put the music down on it. But so you can see how Devil May Cry was originally going to be a Resident Evil game. And, oh. Of course I don't have ad block in this mode, do I? Originally going to be a Resident Evil game, but it was going to be Resident Evil 4, right? So you can kind of see with like the gothic architecture how this could have been a Resident Evil game, right? But they kind of, I think at some point in development, they were like, oh, well, what if we got rid of the tank controls, and what if we added in like a close range attack? And how the kind of camera works in this game is, if you're holding a direction, you will keep going forward no matter if the camera changes. So if you're holding left and the camera switches, you'll keep moving the way that you're facing until you move the analog stick again. So there's that, and there's also the lock-on system, and that becomes relative at that point. So what I want to do is I want to have a lock-on system, probably similar to this, but with more focus on gunplay, and with like cover elements, I'm thinking. But I don't think I'm going to be able to get something quite as cool as this. But I think close range attacks will be a thing. The camera systems are so hard to get right. Yeah, I agree entirely, Ian. So a lot of my thought process for this project is, you play any game, right? I don't know, say if let's go to YouTube again. I don't know, you pick a modern video game, any of them. They all look like Gears of War, right? And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because I really like Gears of War. But they're all like... oh god, advertising. I mean, you all know what Gears of War looks like, right? You've got a camera, and you've got a dude. You've got your dude here, and he runs and stuff. But your camera, this is essentially a first-person game, right? Your camera controls basically like a first-person shooter, but you've got a dude here, so it's like over the shoulder, yeah. But like every game has kind of become an over the shoulder game, and you can see why, right? Your character has to have well-toned glutes. That is true, yeah. Like Marcus Phoenix has got buns of steel. You've got to respect that. I'd put Solid Snake above Marcus Phoenix, but I think Marcus Phoenix is probably a chunkier man altogether. But yeah, I think games at the moment, they have fantastic art. Don't get me wrong. The art in this game, like this is like a first generation Xbox 360 game. The art's fantastic. Look at this. It's amazing, right? Like, it took a massive team to make this stuff, but the camera angle, it kind of like, it takes away a lot of authorship from the director, the game director. An idea for authored camera angles, I thought about one of your prior streams. Have an invisible game object like 10 meters in front of the player's forward, and then pick a camera that's closest to the game object while having the player invisible. That's an interesting point, Nova. I think sometimes I review my streams, and a couple of... I think I missed one of your chats, and you were talking about creating tools and automating a lot of things. Like, you were talking about automating the camera picking, right? And I had to think about it, and I'm like, that does seem like a good idea, but I think for what I want to do, I'm not sure if that would cause limitations. So I think for now I'm going to use just triggers, and those triggers will kind of switch to different cameras. That's something I need to think about. I think for now, the more authorship I can do, it's not like a large amount of work to add in triggers, so I think that's good for now. But I definitely think there is a case for automating it entirely based on your proximity to cameras. So yeah, I did have to think about it, but I think the more control you've got over that, the better at the moment. So yeah, like I'd like it to... I've just played too many games where the triggers were frustrating. Maybe, yeah, I mean, I think this is an issue with it. So again, if we like go back to Devil May Cry, it's not like a PS1 fixed camera, right? It's not like going over a JPEG, but the camera does move dynamically on rails and stuff. So I think maybe there's a middle ground where it tries to evoke a feel of the visuals from a PS1 fixed camera game, but it does do like shots like you're seeing here where you've got like pans and scans. So that's kind of my current thought process uh, in terms of what I want it to be. um, I've got some ideas for like USPs. So I've kind of gone down like, so this is going to be like a cyberpunk game, right? And I'm thinking the character can have a laptop around at any time. So I've kind of, at the moment, I've pinched this idea of a briefcase. So if you imagine like a briefcase on the character here, imagine they're like carrying one around, yeah? In that briefcase will be their items, but also in another compartment there'll be like a whole cyber deck. So from there you can kind of initiate hacks, and I think something like making that storage system, whether it's a briefcase or a backpack or whatever, giving the player a laptop or like a cyber deck. Yeah, one hell of a briefcase, yeah. But giving the player some kind of in a cyberpunk game, giving them access to a network that they can like do things, they can hack and perform different actions. So like, I don't know, very simple. Say you were getting attacked, yeah, you could equip some night vision goggles and hack the lighting system, and then suddenly it would go dark, right? That's like a really simple example. Or like if there was like a sliding door or something. Come here, cube. Come to me, cube. Yeah, like say this cube is like a door, and you have to like hack it to open it. So you'd have to connect to it. Your player would have to like connect to it like wirelessly or wired, and they'd have to input some commands to make it open. So it would open. It might be slow, yeah, and then maybe some enemies will come from here. The enemies will be like, "Oh, get that guy." You'll go through, initiate a hack to close it, and that would kind of resolve a combat situation without any deaths. Or like if the player just wanted to blast another one, like they could do that. So I'm trying to think of things that would make the game a bit more unique, rather than I'm putting more thought into the combat system and trying to make something that's engaging. So if anyone's got any thoughts of like little set pieces that they think that would be cool, like, sounds like you need some variable time control. Yeah, that's exactly right, Nova. Right? I think we can kind of write into the story that the main character, they're like super god hacker, and when they are at a laptop, they entered like a bullet time hacking state, right? So something like that could be really cool, I think. So I like the idea of having hack time. Yeah, I like the idea of having it so it's like command line as well. So say if you were playing on oh, my desktop's come up. Say if you were playing on PC and you have access to a keyboard, you could like jack into the light systems and then type in like I don't know, you could go through the file system and try and find stuff, or like find ways to different things in the network. Yeah, if that's exactly it. That's exactly it, Nova. So like proper like there wouldn't be like a realistic hacking system, but I like the idea of making the player type to hack, basically. On a gamepad, I think you would have to have a preset number of commands, right? So maybe you right-clicked on the command line area, and then it would be like, here are the commands that are available to you. You select that, you know, it goes my command, enter, and then it runs that. So that's kind of my idea of where to take that. Obviously, there's a lot to happen before we get to that, but I think that will be the USP. Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that, Nova. It's very, very kind of you. So I think I am trying to think more about the combat. So I think eventually, depending on how busy I am, maybe in a month or two, we can prototype some combat animations. Start thinking about enemies. Good thinking about controller players. Yeah, I totally forgot about them. Yeah, I mean, I think it's just one of those things where I'm like, oh, this would be a really cool idea to hack things, and then it's like, well, I couldn't release it on Switch then, you know, or I couldn't put it on, you know, any consoles because they don't have a keyboard. So you need to have some kind of system in place for that. But I like the idea of giving a player a time constraint when they're trying to do something. So you've got the action kind of game world, and then you've kind of got this hacking game world, and they both kind of overlap. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, that's what I've been thinking about this week in relating to this project. I don't know if anyone's working on any game prototypes or anything in chat. Like, I'd be eager to hear about them if anyone is. Because obviously what happens is on this stream, I seem to just waffle on about this, but if anyone wants feedback on their work, I'm more than happy to kind of go over it on stream. So yeah. Still learning dots. Unity put a dots best practice course. Oh, that's fantastic, Nova. I had no idea. I'll check that link out. That's really, really good to hear. Just restarted work on my 2D sandbox game, ironing out some UX and bugs. Then I will share. Yeah, I'd love to see it. Like, is it like, I think I've seen some of your sandboxy stuff before, Ian. Like, what's it kind of like? Is there anything that's comparable to? Or is it like a 2D Minecraft or something along those lines? Let's see, what else did I have planned for today? I did write a plan. Addressables, gameplay styles, asset list. 2D tabs, a bit like Lemmings. That's no one's made a Lemmings games in years, so I think Lemmings is really cool. Yeah, that'd be really cool. I'd be interested to see how that goes. So it says here in my text document of things to think about is I need to start thinking about my asset lists. So I'm normally pretty bad when it comes to asset lists, but and it's maybe a little early for me to be thinking about that. A bit like Lemmings, bringing it back. Yeah. I think there's going to be a lot of people who would want that. Like, I think it would work well as a mobile game as well. You could have that on, if it was like pointer controlled, you could have that on mobile or desktop. But yeah, there's probably a lot of room for things there. Yeah. So in terms of assets for this, I think I need, there's quite a lot. Obviously I think I've got a workflow down for levels. but I think for this prototype I need to make 3 or 4 basic enemy types, right? And there'll be like NPCs and items, and there needs to be music. So writing a small asset list, it kind of becomes very quickly you're like, oh, I need all of this stuff. So if we were to like write an asset list, if we were to write an asset list, yeah. And let's try and like maybe separate it out, right? So we need levels. So levels, obviously, we've gone over how that workflow is working. So we're using Quixel and real-time CSG on this project. CSG, real-time. So what I've been doing is I've been like, what scenes are there? So there's going to be a subway, a sewer, and a like the innards of a corporation building. So corp building. So those are like that's kind of how the levels are working. In terms of characters, these are probably going to be made in Blender, and I need, so obviously I need a main character. What about having lots of civilians? Most of these games are empty, have to deal with the collateral damage. That's quite interesting. So the first scene is supposed to be like an abandoned subway, but I guess it could be a subway in use, right? You could kind of go through a subway that's in use and then go to an abandoned section, perhaps. And we could probably do a lot of world building with with like actual people in there, kind of waiting for waiting for a train. So that's actually a good suggestion. I'll put that down as maybe a live subway. Let's put this font size down, it's a bit big. Okay. So characters, Blender, I need main character, weapons. I guess weapons aren't necessarily exclusive to the main character. NPCs, enemies. I think there's going to be 3 enemy types for the prototype. Something that's, I mean, I think that's achievable. Maybe that will go down to 1. I don't know. Weapons, again, we'll do 3 types. And that will be shared between the player and enemies. VFX, we'll need like explosions, probably, that type of thing. Like, I did have this idea of like kind of having like a hacking kind of energy thing. So I'm going to type magic effects, but I haven't really thought that through yet. So in terms of enemy types, I want it to be like there's like a corp suit, like a security, some kind of mutants in the sewers, and then some kind of mechanical enemy, so like a robot of some kind. And I suppose we could introduce some kind of hacking for mechanized enemies. robot slash cyborg. VFX, explosions, magic effects, hacking effects. Obviously we need sound for all of the different assets and music. In terms of music, we need... So there's a couple different ways we could deal with the music. We could just have music on the title screen, and then each area has ambience. Ambient. I think like some music for like cutscenes would be good. Like if there's like, because I want there to be story cutscenes in it. I think without music they might be a bit dull. So again, I'm just gonna do the rule of threes here. So 3 different music tracks. So it'll be like an intrigue. Oh, how do you spell intrigue? That's good enough. So it'll be like intrigue, action, and what's the other type of music people like? How do you plan on handling cutscenes? Unity Cinema Machine. So I think the camera is probably going to use Unity Cinema Machine. So I think you can do tracked shots. I'm fairly certain of that, in fact. So I think the cameras will be using Cinema Machine to a degree anyway. But I am planning to use the Unity cutscene. Is it just called Unity Cutscenes? Let's have a look. Unity... What's it called? Oh my god, what's happening? Timeline, the new timeline, that's what I meant. Unity timeline. Using that, the animation packages I've got integrate well into it, apparently. I've used timeline a bit in the past. It works well with logic as well. So that's probably how I'll be doing the cutscenes. There's likely to be no voice for now. So voice, not something to worry about. Text for story. Obviously that needs to be done. So dialogue. Sound. Oh, sorry, excuse me. So for sound, there's a few things that need to be done. One thing which I always remember about... let's just pause this for now. That Parasite Eve. Is there's always footsteps. Like everything has a unique sound for your feet. And you kind of potter about. Like, we could just find any bit in the game where you run about and you'll hear it. Come on. Yeah, so like, just a little pottering about with footsteps. And as you kind of go over different things, the sound changes. And I think that'll kind of help make things feel a bit more alive. Maybe that's the wrong word. But yeah, just a little footstep sounds. Something I want in. So footsteps will need like damage, grunt, UI sounds. UI sounds. What else do we need? Like guns. Guns. magic sounds. There's probably a lot more than that, but I think that's a good kickoff. Let's think about the different weapon types we want. So I think what we want is a handgun, a shotgun. This shit writes itself. Handgun, shotgun, and a rifle, right? That's like the 3 weapon types. An interesting text-to-speech for games I found. Oh. That's quite interesting. Yeah, like text-to-speech is actually... It's actually pretty good right now, right? It might be okay for a prototype. 3 types, enemies, NPCs. So I'm not sure what NPCs there would be, but potentially there's like civilians, right? And maybe TBC on that one. We'll wait for the story. Levels, characters, VFX. So with weapon animations, these all require different animations. So I mean, if all of our enemies are like bipedal, right? They're all kind of like humans. We can just use off-the-shelf animation assets. But, you know, if they're shooting, they need a handgun shoot, a shotgun shoot, and a rifle shoot. They all need to be held differently, so that's already quite a lot that needs to happen there. Sound, music, text for story, or do they? Yes, I mean, sure. I think they should, but point taken. The other big thing is UI, which is never fun. So UI, breaking that down. So obviously we've got inventory, title, inventory. We'll likely have dialogue. So with dialogue, I'll save this as sets. So for dialogue, again, going from like PS1. I don't know if we can get some screenshots here. Yeah. So I'd like to have a portrait of the character. I think that's like a big cool thing in PS1 games, is when you have a little portrait on the side. Obviously that's just another thing that needs to be made. So portrait. Obviously if they're like high definition 3D characters, we can just use a pre-render, but I mean I don't think it would look as good, right? If this is like a discrete piece of art that someone's made. And when I've been going through Chrono Cross recently, every character has their own. There's like 50 playable characters, and they've all got a portrait. Whenever you talk to someone and they have a portrait, you're kind of like, that person's important, right? So not a good art in that. But yeah, portraits, I think they add a lot. Text for story. Never really written a story before, so, or not like dialogue at least, so This is a big unknown for me. Let's bring the font size down again. UI, title, inventory, dialogue, portrait. Now, I think the inventory will be kind of like the catch-all for how you equip things, and but one thing that might happen is a shop, but maybe we just don't worry about the shop for now in terms of prototyping. So what else would we need? I think this is the main things we need. There's already quite a lot here. So yeah, there's quite a lot there. The UI will probably need some kind of additional 2D art. Additional 2D art. And there's definitely stuff which probably isn't coming to mind. I'm going to put animations, and that should be its own list of things. I have little experience writing dialogue. Best tip I can give starting out: record the dialogue and play it back to get a feel for how spoken text is different from written text. Yeah, I mean, hopefully someone else will be doing the dialogue. But that does sound like a good tip. Yeah, like, writing is something I've not really done. I was interested in script writing as a kid. Like, I used to write film scripts and I suppose dialogue in them, but you know, I've never done it in any kind of a professional capacity. So hopefully that can get offloaded. Is there anything I'm missing? I don't think so. But there definitely is. Guns, UI sounds. Okay. Well, there's already a lot to be happening there. There's already a lot happening there. Levels we can do, characters we can do, ambient objects trash. Yeah, one of the good things about Quixel is it does have a library of props, but maybe putting props down. Additional props. I mean, obviously these are just lines of text, but each of these is probably like a lot of work. I mean, character modeling, I think the minimum I could probably do model a character nowadays is 2 or 3 days. It'd probably be not great. So this character work on its own is probably like a month's worth of work for me. Sound, asset store to the rescue. I'd like it to be discreet, but having said that, I think we can do most of this other stuff with the asset store. So VFX can all be asset store, sound can be asset store, music can be asset store. As much as I want to like make custom music, this will probably be off the shelf. UI will probably have to be discreet rather than asset store. Okay, let's put like a tag next to these. asset store. UI. I'll put custom. Animations. That's going to be a mix of Mixamo and custom and modified Mixamo animations. All of our characters need design work done on them. So they'll need like concepts. Within this text, there's like world, building, what is the overarching storyline. There's a lot there which I'm kind of glossing over. So hopefully I won't have to worry about that. Okay. I think that's probably good for now. So to wrap up, what we'll do is we'll go over what the kind of final code looked like for the briefcase, because it did have to change a fair bit, but not too much. So we'll just quickly go over that for like 15 minutes or something, and then we'll wrap up. So the first thing to remember is we're kind of trying to separate the UI from the data, right? So let's get Visual Studio up. I'll close all of this down. And our three types, kind of three base data types for our inventory was the storage grid, the item type, and the item. I renamed these. I think item was called item ref, but I kind of changed it about a little bit. So from the top level, we've got item type, which defines the item, defines the size, shape, and other properties associated with the item as it exists in storage. So we've got a string for its name, ID, the width and height of the storage cells that define the shape, and some cells that define which of those are active. Item, which is like a which has an item type in it, basically. So an item is of an item type, and that's like something that you would pick up. There's, you know, a fair amount happening here, as you can see, so I'm not going to go over it line by line. But one of the key things that I had to modify was I wanted this all to be serializable to JSON files. I should just be fold all. Yeah, okay. So I've made a lot of these things private, and you access them through methods. I could have used get and sets instead. That's like a completely valid way of doing it as well. But the item has its position, if it has one, as X and Y. How many items are in that stack, the rotation, and its name serialized. So if we have a look at the serialized version, we'll have to beautify this. Hang on. JSON beautify. Let's have a look here. So our item, we've just got an item here, and it's just serializing down to an X and Y position, stack, rotation, the item type it is, so that's an L piece. And then we've also got storage, so if we've got anything stored within that item, like any custom mods, that'll just work like the storage grid above. Beautify Jason. Yeah, all good, all good. So yeah, that works well. That works well. So anything that I was being lazy with, a lot of these were public before, but now you access them through like get stack, or add to stack, set stack. So it's just a bunch of like utilities, functions that just modify the values rather than modifying them directly. Get position, get rotation, rotate, get cell indices, like the whole bunch of stuff in item just for modifying its base data. And then obviously storage grid is where we're keeping all of these items. And like we just saw, serialized, it's just got its width and height, and then a list of items. And we've just got some functionality on there to calculate the cells that are in use. So when we're picking locations, we're getting valid locations. You should install uBlock. I have uBlock Origin installed. It's just not in private mode. Yeah. So yeah, get width, get height, check valid grid position, and then adding an auto add function and a remove function. And whenever we add or remove, we kind of update this cells in use list. So there's just a update cell status function there, which just makes sure that's up to date. And then there's a find item. You can set an option to enable it in private mode. Yeah, I mean, I'm not too fussed, to be honest. Like, I don't really use private mode much, but I guess if I'm going to be using it in streams, I should probably do that. So yeah, like, data side, there's a bit going on, but not that much. Like, I think, what's this, 170 lines of code. The type itself is 28 lines of code, and the item is like, again, about 189 lines of code. So what, like 400 lines of code there under for the data side of things. That's all good. But the where it gets a bit more complicated is sadly in displaying it. So we have, do items exist in game or when you are picking it up? Yeah, so let me show you the class. So we've got the item type prefab, and then we use that basically to we use the item type to create the item. So we get like the item type, and then we create a new item data type using the item type and the stat count for that object. So when it's collided, yeah. So yeah, that's how that works. UI. So this needs cleaning up. There's quite a lot of unused code here and code that could be removed. But the top level is the storage grid UI. And if we have a look in our canvas, you can see how we've got two briefcase panels here, two storage grid UI instances. So they're completely separate. We've got the top one and the bottom one, and we just set them up with some prefabs for creating the cells. So we create the grid, we pass in the data type of storage grid, and that will create the UI visuals for that. And then there's a bunch of like initialization, saving and loading to JSON. I've got a separate kind of class for saving and loading. That works really well. Auto add, like again, we kind of duplicate a lot of the names, like the functionality in data is set through the UI space, because we have references to UI rather than to items or to the base data types a lot of the time, so we have to kind of re-implement those. But yeah, there's not a lot of functions there. We don't need this update. Delete that. So we've got create, initialize, save and load, and auto-adding stuff. In the grid, we've got our cells, and our cells are just the white boxes. What was the bug from the last stream where it picked the object up? Oh, it was something really, really dumb. I forget what it was, but there was a bug in the overlap check code where an item wasn't being initialized, so its collision grid, it wasn't being initialized at the right time. It like, yeah, like, so the item grid would check to see if it overlapped, and then the item would be populated. So it would never be correct. So it's just like a really dumb order thing. Yeah. So that's our storage grid UI. And each of these cells we create in the panels called cell UI. And we have a look at these. We just store data on these, so we store a reference to the storage grid. We don't need storage grid index anymore. Oh, and where it is on the X and Y, because we need that to, when we add something to this storage grid cell, we need to know the X and Y, so we know where to add it in storage. So that's just a visual cell. And we've also got something here called storage grid mouse control. Now eventually this will need a joypad control, but this code did live in storage grid cell UI, and what this is doing is it creates a graphics raycaster, and as I move the mouse around, the graphics raycaster will go down on the Z and pick any UI elements that are, and the mouse is over essentially. So when I drag something about, let's restart that. Oh, come on Unity, you can do it. So when I drag something about, it's got a reference to the item I've got and to the cell that's underneath the item, and using that I can pick it. So yeah, that creates a graphics raycaster and some pointer event data, and it uses that to raycast. We iterate through all of the things that raycasts through, and if it hits a item cell, we try and place it there when we let go of the mouse button. And if we can't place it there, obviously we have to keep moving it. So you can see how this check could easily happen without a raycaster if we knew what cell was the active cell. So we could move this to a joypad relatively easily. It just requires some work. But yeah, that seems to work quite well. We've just got, again, we've got some grab and place functionality in there for removing and adding back to the cells. And we've got the item UI. Now the item UI lives on the, well, on the UI of the items. So on this L block, we've got item UI. So when we raycast, we're checking if we're hitting an item UI if we don't already have one. And I don't think that's doing a lot. Let's have a look. Item UI. No, it's doing a fair bit. So a lot of this kind of needs tidying up. Let's fold this all up. But you can see how there's not a lot of different classes on here. So we create the visuals. Now, there's a couple of these items are actually made up of a few different things. Let's have a look at one of them. So this T, for example. If I just hide everything else. Oh, that's the wrong T. This one. Okay. So, unfolding it, you can see how there's like, we can kind of double click on that. You can see how there's cells underneath it. Maybe if I just make those visible, it should be visible. Yeah, there are cells underneath there. So we need those cells to check for the pivot we're using, right? So when we mouse over this, we're mousing over like top left cell or like middle cell. And then when we rotate, we're rotating around that cell. If we just had this item display over it, which is literally just a display object, there's no like logic in it. If we had just that, we wouldn't be able to pick the X and Y coordinate to rotate around. So it's important that we have that data. And again, that's using item cell UI. And that's just got its X and Y position. So that's how we store that data. We just create that dynamically when we create our objects, our items. And then we've just got some like basic functionality for rotating, issuing like rotation commands and rotating the visuals and stuff. Again, it's a little bit more complex than it needs to be. Probably could be pared down. But that's kind of, I think that's basically all of it. And then obviously we've got this prefab, which we've been using, which just has references to the objects we've been using on the item type. So we're using these item type prefabs to define the objects at the moment. But like earlier in the stream, I want to move these to scriptable objects and then load them in using the addressable system. So that's kind of my idea for data management there. And that's probably the next thing I'll do. And once that's done, then I can move on to dialogue, I think. So maybe next week will be finally the week where we have a dialogue, like a story cutscene stream. I'd like to do that on stream. I think it'd be a lot of fun. But we have to do one thing at a time. Right. Because that's kind of all I've got this week. So, I mean, there's like 9 people here, which is mind-blowing to me. I feel like I've just kind of been rambling for 2 hours. But I appreciate everyone kind of showing an interest in the prototype I'm working on. And I hope you're kind of getting something out of it. I try and be educational on this stream, so I try and go over how I'm doing stuff. So today was like addressables, that was a big thing I wanted to cover. But we also did a bit about thinking about assets and what, the artistic side of game creation. So, oh, thanks, Nova. Yeah. Um, so yeah, I hope everyone got something out of this stream today. Normally I raid Sweatshop Dev. I don't know if he's streaming. Maybe he is. Let's have a little look, shall we? His prototype's coming on quite a lot. Yeah, he's not streaming at the moment. But check him out when he's live. His prototypes come on a lot, and definitely worth supporting. If anyone in chat streams game dev and they want to shout out, just let me know and I'll check you out. Because I think it's nice to have a community. It's nice to know there's a community of people out there making stuff. And in the days of the coronavirus, sometimes it's just nice to see someone going through the same challenges in game dev that you do. So I want to start. That'd be cool, Ian. Yeah, I'll retweet you. All of that stuff. Give you the likes. All right, cool. Okay, so again, thanks for tuning in, and next week hopefully we'll get some more progress then. Oh, it's got dark. All right, cheers everyone. Bye.